Well, Lydia was a merchant of purple. We don't actually know if she sold purple cloth or the dye that would turn it into purple. Whichever, this small detail that Luke includes in his account of Paul and Silas meeting Lydia on the riverbank tells us a lot about Lydia. You see, in those days, dyes were natural products, not like the synthetics that we use today. The dyes for the color purple was the most expensive, for it was made from a juice found in minute quantities in the veins of a specific shellfish. From the veins of these shellfish comes a substance that, when exposed to the light, takes on exquisite hues ranging from indigo to dark crimson. So since it took thousands of these tiny molecules to dye just a yard or two of cloth, it was worth its weight in silver. So the garments made were a statement of status and wealth, worn by royalty and the elite. This was Lydia's business. It's what brought her to Thyatira, a city known for the trade of fine goods. And here Lydia would have rubbed shoulders with the powerful of Philippi, for she was a wealthy businesswoman. She had her own home, and she had servants. And after meeting Paul at the river, she became a leading patron to the growing Christian community. In fact, the church of Philippi began in her home. And it all started at the river. It was the Sabbath when Paul and Silas arrived. They came from Troas, and they went searching for a place of prayer. And apparently there wasn't a synagogue. Perhaps it was because the Jewish community didn't have the required 10 men to form a minyan. There had to be 10 to gather officially in Jewish prayer. So Paul and Silas went to the river, and here they came upon a gathering of women, including Lydia. Now, Lydia was a God-fearer. You see, she believed in God, but she was not within the Jewish faith. So Paul began to teach, and through his teachings, Lydia's mind was opened, and she became a believer in Jesus Christ. She and her entire household was baptized. Then, longing to know more about Jesus, she compelled Paul and his companions to stay at her home and to share their knowledge in return for her hospitality. So you see, she was the first European to convert to Christianity. Well, we know how well it went for Paul wrote in his letter, when he wrote to the Philippians, he praised Lydia and refers to the church in Philippi as his crown and his jewel. The seeds of that great church were sown by a group of women praying on a riverbank. In her book, Miriam, Mary, and Me, Lois Wilson, you remember, a former moderator of the United Church, she wrote in there, when Paul arrived on the scene, there were already a number of women-led communities actively engaged in mission work. He sought out those women, and to do Paul justice, he confirmed, valued, and stressed the importance of their leadership. In Romans 16, there's a passage that names 26 colleagues of Paul, and there are at least 11 who are women. So Lydia ran a house church in her home, a Christian community, the first in Europe. So she is considered to be the mother of Christianity. Okay, so let's flash ahead now to the year 1936. Another Lydia, Lydia Grucci, was ordained by the United Church of Canada, the first woman of any Christian denomination to be ordained, and that's 80 years ago. Now, some here just might remember that. they might remember that and maybe know how special it was, or maybe how controversial it was. I've often wondered if Lydia Grucci's parents had named her after the Lydia that was baptized at the river. So I think that's why the story of Lydia and the other women who spread the gospel along with Paul, and not without risk to their personal safety, needs to be named and honored. And what better occasion than on Mother's Day? And actually, I want to point something out. I want to point out the carvings on your pulpit. Have you ever looked at them? I encourage you to do so, and I'm going to point out something very special. Some will remember when I was here serving with Bruce Small. It was during the time of the Ecumenical Decade in Solidarity with Women. And the Reverend Small noticed that all the carvings on the pulpit were men. So we thought maybe we should do something about that. And we had a carving made as a woman. And I decided that I would like to gift that carving to the congregation in memory of my aunt, who was quite influential in my journey of faith. So we made a woman. You know where she is? She's right here. Right here. And we named her Lydia. So here's your Lydia. I just thought maybe she should have a purple stole to represent where she came from. So Lydia's on your pulpit, the mother of Christianity. So it's Mother's Day. It's Mother's Day today, here in Canada and the US and Australia. And the history of Mother's Day is interesting because, you know, it started as a Mother's Day for peace. And when you write that, if I were writing for you, would see that the apostrophe is outside the S. So it's plural. And it started with the suffragettes, and it was a day set aside to promote peace and nonviolence in the world. Now, in the days of the suffragettes, one of the arguments for giving women the vote was that a woman's mothering instincts, her mother-heartedness, would mean that there would likely be more promotion of peace in the world. So a Mother's Day for Peace was introduced way back in 1872 by Julia Ward Howe. And then in 1907, Annie Jarvis renewed the whole effort, and she held a church service to give thanks for mothers and all that they do. Well, of course, over the century, this has been transformed into a very secular honoring of mothers, much to the benefit of Hallmark cards and Laura Secord and Flowers Unlimited. Now, I have to say, I'm not against mothers or grandmothers getting special recognition. I'm not above a little special attention myself. But I want us to stretch our understanding of this special day, especially in light of our faith. So I suggest that we think of Mother's Day as a day about love in action. With this day, we remember the countless ways that mothers and maternal figures in our lives have shaped who we are. In the church, we also recognize today as Christian Family Sunday. It's a Sunday when we remember the people who have nurtured us in our faith, whether they are members of our families or members of our church family. You know, the Sunday school teachers who put up with us when we were young, camp leaders, the youth group leaders, our UCW friends, the person beside you in the pew, male or female, whoever has helped us glimpse the mothering heart of God. And also here at First Grantham, it's Baptismal Sunday. And we have waded into the waters with little Maxine. We have named her as God's beloved child. We have called upon the Spirit, the Advocate, the the one whom Jesus said would be with us to remind us of all that he has said. We have called upon the Spirit to bless her and keep her. You know, in my opinion, having this precious ritual on Mother's Day totally enhances the meaning of Mother's Day. It also reminds me of the ritual that Jewish families practice. They practice it weekly at their Shabbat. For girls like little Maxine, it would begin with, "May you be like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah." For boys, it would begin, "May you be like Ephraim and Manasseh." And then it would continue, "May God bless you and guard you. May God show you favor and be gracious to you. May God show you kindness and grant you peace." So the family would gather around, and the person giving the blessing would place a hand on the child's head and recite those ancient words. I can only imagine how empowering that would be to a young person, how blessed they would feel, being reminded to whom they belong every Friday evening. Little Maxine received such a blessing this morning, but now that the drops of water have dried, it's up to us and to her family to love and nurture her in the faith so that she will always know to whom she belongs. It's up to us to tell her the story, not only of her baptism, but also of Lydia's, so that as she meets the challenges of life, she will have the heritage of her faith in her heart. As she remembers this day and says with confidence, "I am Maxine Barbara, a precious child of God." May God's Spirit dwell within each one of us, remembering that we too have been welcomed at the river. We too are God's children. And may God bless you and guard you. May God show you favor and be gracious to you. May God show you kindness and grant you peace. Amen.